sweat got me glowing like Edward Cullen. What up, hooligans? It's Jennifer. Whoa, why did I turn into an ASMR voice channel? It's Jennifer and welcome back to Osos. So a couple of things. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I have been away for like over a month. Not to make this about me because there are definitely like way bigger issues in the world going on right now, but just to explain why I took my little break, I realized I was experiencing some pretty bad burnout as well as some kind of intense mental health issues, which I've never really like experienced to that extent before. So I kind of just needed that time to like relax, find myself and like cry every day. Don't look at me, I don't like emotions. So for me, it was like very coincidental timing that I was taking my break and like isolating myself from other people as well as being forced to isolate. So I feel like right now is a great time to do some self-reflecting, make some DIYs, maybe embroider something. Speaking of embroidering things, today's video is going to be another DIY embroidery video. And I feel like it's a great quarantine hobby because it passes a lot of time. Embroidery takes so long, and you can also do it while binging a show or something because I know you guys are already doing that. And another reason is like a little bit more intense, but basically the last time that I filmed a DIY embroidery video in November, it was like one of the like peak moments that I knew I needed to take a break. I'm gonna freaking start crying. I'm not gonna cry. Emotions are not real. They're a social construct. Basically, it was like crying throughout filming the video. Like while I was embroidering, I'd be like sobbing hysterically and I'd be like, no, it's fine. Like just like keep going. And now that I think back on it, it's like really intense. So this video is like kind of symbolic for me because I'm coming back to this same concept with like a different mindset. Obviously my problems are very privileged problems, so I don't want to be insensitive, but I just want to like explain what happened to me, I guess. At the same time, I know everything is like really scary right now for the whole world, so I hope you guys are doing okay. Anyway, today is embroidery, the love of my life. This is once again me promoting my grandma hobbies. I feel like I'm already living the retirement lifestyle at 21 years old, but I kind of love it. Today, I'm gonna be doing 3 different projects and they're going in ascending order from easiest to most difficult. Yeah. Let's get started. I think I'm gonna film that whole intro again. All right, starting off with materials, obviously you're gonna need some embroidery thread. I have a bunch here. I ordered these all off of Amazon. It came with this whole kit of embroidery essentials, including the thread, the needles, embroidery hoops, that kind of stuff. So I'll link that kit down below, but if you can't access that right now because of quarantine and shipping issues, you can also try just using some regular thread if you have that. You might have to double it up or go over it a couple times just to make it thick enough, but it should work. It just might take a little bit more time. You're also gonna need a needle, and that's pretty much it for essentials. Some other optional tools that might help are a seam ripper in case you mess up, embroidery hoops, this just keeps the fabric taut, and also some fabric stabilizer. This helps you transfer images and helps make your fabric stiff. All right, that's it for materials. So for the first embroidery project, I'm taking my nude hoodie and I'm planning on doing this mountain scenery type embroidery on the top right corner. So I'm just lightly tracing out my mountain design in the corner. It's just to see approximately where I would want my design to be. Then I'm taking some black embroidery thread, and embroidery thread usually comes with 6 individual threads twisted together. So I'm separating that into 3 groups of 2 threads each. Usually I would separate into 2 groups of 3 threads, but since I wanted this design to be more detailed and have a thinner line, I went with 2 threads. Next, I just added my embroidery hoop to keep the fabric tight, and then I started embroidering. So obviously all mountains have different shapes, so I wasn't too careful about making the lines really smooth. In fact, I wanted them to be a bit jagged to make it look a little bit more realistic. But essentially, I just made 2 mountain peaks, and we all know what mountains look like. I used a reference photo, but you can just kind of see what I'm doing here. So don't worry about making it too perfect. So the stitch that I'm using is kind of a cross between back stitching and split stitching, I believe it's called. For back stitch, I would sew a stitch, and for the next stitch, I pushed the needle back down where that previous stitch ended. For a split stitch, I would push the needle back down halfway from where the last stitch ended, so it kind of overlaps a bit. So I would kind of mix the two types of stitches throughout the design depending on what was needed. Whenever I did do a split stitch, I would only overlap maybe like a fifth of the way of the stitch. I hope all of that made sense. Not a professional embroidery person over here. So as you can see, I made two mountain peaks and they kind of come together in the middle. I also did some snow on the top by making some triangles and diagonal lines. I added some contours on the mountains. This design actually is really easy because of the flexibility of it. It can be a little bit abstract. There's no strict rules about what mountains have to look like. After that, I wanted to embellish a little bit, so I added a little crescent moon on top, and I used shorter stitches for this to make it look curved. And then I also added some stars just by doing these little crosses. I made some bigger, made some smaller, and it just adds variation. Here is the final design. I really like how it turned out, and it was really simple to make, so would recommend trying it out. Never gonna stand a chance. Heartbreak like a sad romance. Said that you never come back again. Been 3 days, now you're back again. But I'm not your man, no I'm not your man. I can blow your mind like whoa. Alright, for the next project, I am taking this yellow t-shirt and I wanted to embroider a bee onto it. Save the bees, hee hee. So I just lightly sketched out the bee shape onto my shirt. Honestly, I wish I had done a more detailed job at sketching it out first so that it didn't look so wonky in the end, but it is what it is. So I'm starting off with some black embroidery thread that I split into 2 groups of 3 strands each. I'm taking one of those 3 strands and threading it onto the needle. Then I started embroidering, and I'm using the same type of stitch as I did last time. So I'm starting out by just outlining the entire thing and then filling in later. So I started with a circle for the head. And then a slightly larger circle for the midsection, and then a long oval shape for the bottom. Next, I'm moving on to the wings. Oh, no. Next, I'm moving on to the limbs, the legs, if you will. Honestly, I wish I had done the legs a little bit shorter because at the end, I mean, you'll see what it looks like at the end. But anyway, moving on to the wings, I did kind of like a trapezoidal oval shape, and then I just sewed these diagonal lines within the wings. Then I did 2 more legs on top and then the antennas, and I just repeated the exact same thing on the other side. So now I'm gonna start filling the bee in. I started out by stitching some stripes onto the bottom portion. Then I filled in the head with just all black, and then I went in with some yellow embroidery thread and kind of just filled in the rest, so the middle circle and then in between the black stripes. And that's pretty much it. Honestly, not my best work. It low-key looks like a mosquito crossed with a bee. I think it's because the legs are way too long. Like, it just looks like a massive mosquito bee. Like, I don't know how else to explain it. But from far away, it looks decent. Just like, don't come too close. But anyway, I think overall it was successful. Alright, for the third project, I wanted to do some kind of cool design on this cropped black corduroy jacket that I have, and I decided on doing that Michelangelo touching hands painting because I thought it would be a cool concept to put it on a jacket, to like have the hands on either side. So I just lightly sketched out the design with some white chalk. However, since the material is corduroy, it's not super easy to be precise with the design, and obviously the design that I picked was like kind of intricate because it's a hand. It actually has an anatomical shape, like it's pretty specific. So I kind of just went with the flow and like hoped everything would work out. So I took some off-white embroidery thread, split it into 2 groups of 3 strands, and threaded one of those into my needle. Because there was such a stark contrast between the fabric and the thread, I used a split stitch just to make the line look more continuous and not like it was broken up. So I started out by embroidering the wrist portion and then added a curve to go into the hand portion. Essentially, I'm kind of like eyeballing this and freehand embroidering because obviously the chalk design that I did earlier is not very exact. So things kind of ended up looking a little bit wonky. I had to like take out threads and redo a lot of things a bunch of times. Now moving on to the fingers, and I honestly, like, I don't really know how to explain this to you. I kind of just looked at a picture and like hoped for the best. I think the hardest part is the nails. Okay, actually, never mind. Like, all of it is hard. Like, the fingers are just so hard. I don't know how to things just like kind of ended up looking lumpy and like gremlin-like. It just clearly I just have like nothing positive to say about this, and I have like 0 confidence in myself. So yeah, that's it. Nevertheless, I persisted and I added on some like creasing details and folds on the hands to kind of like distract away from the lumpiness and like just overall cartoonish quality of the hand. I sent this to a bunch of people to like hear their feedback on if it was good enough, and they're like, it's got character. And I was like, what does that mean? But anyway, this took me like 5-6 hours, maybe more. I'm not really sure. I was watching a show, but it took me so long. So I was like, I can't just take it all out because I spent so much time on it, and it wasn't like the worst thing in the world. It just wasn't my best work. I know this sounds obvious, but a good reference point for me was actually to use my own hand, just bending it into that shape and to see how my hand naturally curved and bent. Also, I realized I never showed you guys how to end off your thread in the previous 2 projects. So I like to anchor my thread to another piece of thread rather than the actual fabric of the clothing. So I'll just wrap my thread around another piece of thread and then kind of tie it off, and then wrap my thread around the knot that I just created and then tie that off so that it's now a double knot. And then you can just cut off the excess. All right, anyway, this is the finished hand, and like, I don't know, what can I say? It looks like a gremlin hand. It's very lumpy and like, I know I can do better. So for the other side, I took a line drawing of this painting and I printed that out to the exact size that I wanted. And then I'm using this fabric stabilizer, and basically I'm just gonna trace it out onto the stabilizer and then use this as a template for when I'm embroidering. And I just traced that out with a permanent marker. Obviously, this is a very specific product, and I know most of you guys probably don't have it. So try to be creative and think of ways that you can trace the design onto the shirt, whether it's actually cutting out the hand and tracing out the hand onto the shirt, or maybe using a thinner type of paper that you might have at home, or you can try directly just using this piece of white paper. Obviously, it's not going to be as easy to use as this product that was specifically designed for this. So the first method I tried was I cut out the hand shape with a slight border around it, and then I tried to iron it onto the fabric because that's what this material was originally meant for. But I think just the combination of the fabric stabilizer and the corduroy material just didn't really work well, because first of all, the jacket was like melting. I think it was like some kind of plasticky cheap material. So then I tried to just pin the design to the shirt, but I realized it kept flopping around, so it wasn't gonna be very stable. So then I retraced the hand onto another piece of fabric stabilizer, and I just used my embroidery hoop to secure that in place, and that ended up being the best method for me. So then I just used my embroidery thread and I just followed the design. This was so much easier and looked a lot more precise. However, the one issue that I did run into was because there was now a layer of fabric stabilizer on top, no matter how tight I pulled the thread, when I took it off, the thread was gonna be looser than than if I didn't have that layer of fabric stabilizer, if that makes sense. So I had to pull the threads really, really tight, knowing that in the end, it was still gonna kind of look loose. So I just followed the entire design. However, towards the end, I kind of started running out of thread. I kind of had to pick and choose which were the most important parts that I wanted to embroider. So that was basically like the outline of the hand, and I had to choose which creases of the hand were the most important. In the end, this is what it looked like. So I just took off the embroidery hoop and started ripping off the fabric stabilizer. And honestly, this was kind of a strenuous task. It took me quite a while because I had to be very careful about how hard I ripped and where I ripped, because if I ripped too hard or too fast, it was gonna pull up the threads and make them really, really loose. In the end, this is the final result. And clearly this hand is much better than my gremlin hand on the other side. I think if I did this on a lighter colored jacket, like a white jacket or beige or something, anything but black, I would have been able to use a pencil or a pen and would have been able to be a lot more detailed with my initial drawing. Honestly, it's like not as bad as I thought it was gonna be. I think it looks really cool buttoned up as well as open. The moral of the story is I think I did Michelangelo proud with the second hand, but I'm 99% positive that Michelangelo hates me for the first gremlin hand. But the guy's also like not alive to confirm this theory. So that's the video. I don't know how to do an outro. Let me know what kind of videos you guys want to see during this time. I definitely am planning on doing more like at-home DIY type stuff, so I got that covered. If you want to pass some more of your time, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter and stuff. I'm also on TikTok, but I'm not very good. Everything is linked down below. But anyway, I guess I'll see you guys next time. Bye!